Good morning. Our video did not work perfectly that time. Welcome to our last session of our Women on the Move for the fall semester and the actual last Streicker Center event of our fall programming. It's been an amazing semester, and I cannot wait until you see the events that we have planned for our winter and spring sessions. I am Marjorie Schuster, coordinator of our literary events at Temple Emanu-El, and as always, I'd like to thank the Samuel I. Newhouse Foundation for their sponsorship of this series. I have been looking so forward to meeting these two authors, as I am a fan of both of their works. Laurie Gelman's books have actually made me laugh out loud. She really taps into every nuance of female friendships, New York life. Jenna Blum is the international best-selling author of Those Who Save Us, The Stormchasers, and The Lost Family. Our moderator today is Zibby Owens, mom of 4, publisher, author, and podcaster. This promises to be a lively conversation, and we would love to hear your questions, so please add them to the chat feature of Zoom. Now, it is my great pleasure to welcome Laurie Gelman, Jenna Blum, and Zibby Owens.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Thanks, Marjorie.
Welcome. Enjoy your conversation.
Thank you. Hi, Jenna. Hi, Laurie.
Hi. How you doing?
Good. So do you two know each other? Do you want to get to know each other a little bit? Say hi,
Actually just met in the pre-dance that we did, sort of backstage, and it was very nice to meet Jenna. Huge fan.
Now you'll hear even more about each other now. So this will be very exciting. Jenna, I was hoping you could start and tell everybody here a little bit more about Darling Woodrow and your book, Woodrow on the Bench. And also I want you to tell everybody about A Mighty Blaze, because maybe they don't know what that is, and it's such an amazing thing. So.
Oh, thank you so much. And Laurie, I'm wearing my best yoga pants in your honor today. It's actually not very impressive, but they're clean.
As am I.
I have mine. One of the great things about the Zoom era, yoga pants all day, every day. But thank you, Marjorie, and thank you, Temple Streicker, for having us. I'm so excited to be here. And Zibby, you are the queen of everything, as everybody knows. So thank you for being such an industry changer and supporting authors during this really interesting era that we live in. So my new memoir, which I have to say that way because there's something very zsa to me about writing a memoir, which I've never done before, is Woodrow on the Bench. Every time I say that, the book manifests. So Woodrow on the Bench. And Woodrow was my 14-year-old black lab who in the last chapter of his life received a congestive heart failure diagnosis and was given only a few weeks to live. And he lasted 7 more months. And I'm convinced that it was because every day I would take him from my downtown Boston apartment across the street to his favorite park bench. And we would sit there, and all of my good intentions about working and doing work went right out the window because Woodrow was the George Clooney of dogs. And he pulled everybody to us with his animal magnetism, friends, neighbors, and then eventually total strangers came to keep us company on the bench and knit this community around us. And that, I think, is what lifted him up so that he could live another 7 months and teach me incredible lessons about what it means to be part of a community, which then I will parlay into talking about A Mighty Blaze, which is a writing community that I founded with novelist Caroline Levitt, also a bestseller, in the first week of the pandemic, actually, we were watching in horror as our friends' book tours were canceled one by one by one by one. And I called Caroline and said, every book is like a little light in a dark world. And maybe if we put all the books together in one place that are publishing during the pandemic, we can make a mighty blaze. So I threw up some Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. And within that first week, we had every author in the universe coming to us and saying, please put us on the blaze, please put us on the blaze. So now we are a network of 35 creative volunteers, and we have programs every day of the week except Mondays, from debuts to mysteries to legendary authors to a baking show. And Zibby, we have been watching in great awe as you streak like a comet across the sky. Also creating a community that supports authors, readers, indie bookstores, and we're just in awe of you. So it's just a privilege to be sort of a sister influencer and game changer.
That is so sweet. Thank you, Jenna. And Laurie, we've been lucky enough to talk several times as well. Can you tell everyone here a little bit more? Start with Class Mom and give us the trajectory of what's going on until Yoga Pant Nation.
So I started Class Mom when I turned 50 and panicked because both of my daughters were teenagers and they didn't need me anymore. And I knew that it was just a matter of time before I was sitting by myself in the apartment. So I decided to write a book. I ended up writing, after a couple of failed attempts, writing about my experiences as a class mom at the school my daughters went to. I did it for 5 years. And I decided not to have it based in New York City because I feel like it's like the same crap in a different pile. Like wherever you go, someone will tell you their horror story about being a class mom. So I thought if I put it in Kansas, it would be the best. My protagonist is Jen Dixon, and she's a flawed hero. She's very snarky. She doesn't understand when she says inappropriate things, a lot like me. We'll be lucky if I get through this hour without offending at least 7 people. And so that book actually did really well. It resonated with a lot of people. So I wrote a sequel called You've Been Volunteered, where she's the class mom, but she's also been asked to spearhead the safety patrol, which is sort of more a New York thing but there's a lot of parents that had to do some sort of safety patrol-ish type thing. And we got through her then. And then the third one is Yoga Pant Nation. Now she's in charge of the fundraiser for the whole school, which is yet again, the worst job you will ever have in the PTA. So I have a lot of fun writing them. They're just fun, easy reads. If you're looking for something after the heavy stuff, after Woodrow on the Bench, which is probably going to make you cry, then you have something, a little lighter to read that just makes you laugh.
Well, one thing that both of your books do so well is create this sense of community. So Laurie, I know you poke fun at your community a lot, or Jen's class community and all of the moms and crazy characters involved in that. And Jenna's community was her actual community, which she admits to, at least, with all the people who circle the bench. And she mentioned the George Clooney-ness of Woodrow, but in the book, you really go into, Jenna, so many of the characters you meet along the way and how everybody kind of joins together. There's this one amazing scene where the cars all stop that usually speed right by Commonwealth Avenue so that you could walk Woodrow across, and everybody stops and says, you can do it, like, you got this. And they were all cheering you on, as opposed to the moms in Laurie's books, which don't always cheer each other on necessarily. I don't know.
Me.
Or you. Or you when you were fired or whatever from your volunteer position. So what do you make of the role of community in your stories? Like, is it something that you really need? Is it super important? Can you feel good being in a community that you don't feel appreciates you? Just asking.
Jenna?
You're like asking for a friend. I'm like, that's you, Laurie. I think. I think for me, it's a totally essential thing to have community because I'm not married. I'm what one reviewer called a slender divorcee, which I loved because I'm like, oh, now I'm in a Katharine Hepburn movie. Okay, that sounds terrific. And when I had written Woodrow on the Bench, I had just broken an engagement to a man I'm still extremely good friends with. And I had chosen not to have children so I could focus on my writing career. So for me, community is really everything. And I've been sort of a community connector all of my life without knowing it. Like I have been teaching at Grub Street Writers for 21 years. It's this fantastic writing school here in Boston. I was here at its inception, and I've been kind of spinning that platter for a really long time. But it wasn't until these people congregated around me and Woodrow on the bench that I realized, like, oh, this is a thing that is essential to me as food or water. It's something that helps keep me emotionally afloat, as being part of the fabric of this daily life of other people. And now I'm kind of addicted to community, and the Blaze also has reinforced that. And I'm sure I have people in my community who are like, her again, like, stop talking, we are so done with you. But luckily nobody says this to my face. So I have the luxury of thinking I'm at the epicenter of many amazing communities that give me a lot of support and love, and there isn't very much snark in them, and I'm grateful for that. So Laurie, I'm curious about the snark community. It's Twitter.
The snarkiness comes from the voice of Jen, who is my voice, basically. I mean, I make a lot of fun of the PTA. It is my punching bag, but I also try to hedge it with, it's so important to volunteer. And this is we're all in this to build a community together of these great kids and make sure that they have everything they need when they go to school every day. I think my biggest message is just everybody calm down. What happens is you get a lot of women together who used to run companies, and then they stopped and they have kids. So they need to run something. So they want to run the PTA, and everybody wants to be in charge. And there's like a zillion type A's, and you just want everybody to, just like back up and stop. That's sort of what I'm making fun of a little bit. But I also try to appreciate or let my readers appreciate that volunteering at school is extremely important. And that's a community that will always be behind you. The people in I don't know if you've ever had, I know, Jenna, you don't have kids, but Zibby, I know you do. And like when something happens in your family, you get a million calls, and it's, can we bring dinner? Can we do this? I mean, it is the greatest community. So,
I mean, I think that might depend on the school, but yes. I have to say, when we had some loss in our family when my mother-in-law passed away, Temple Emanu-El sent something like super nice. I'm very grateful. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I that family now that they're like rallying and giving stuff to? Like, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, but let's talk even further about community. Let's talk about friendship, because what you said is super interesting to me, Laurie, because if you put people in some situations, like a hyper-competitive women who have too much energy perhaps, or intelligence, or there's not the right outlet for it, and you put them into a community that becomes really competitive, it brings out this one side. Whereas those same women, I really believe, might have been the same friends Jenna had, who would drop everything and help carry an 80-pound dog up 5 flights of stairs, right? So what is it about certain situations that bring, or maybe those women would not do that. I don't know. You could tell us, but there are, more altruistic women in the world and better friends. But what is it about certain situations, and how can we somehow manufacture our communities, like the school, to not create this kind of, bring out the bad in everybody?
I don't know if it's the bad, but it is definitely, it's a situation where you're put into competition almost immediately because of, who is spelling fastest, who is potty trained the quickest. I mean, it starts with the APGAR score when the baby's born. It's like, oh, your APGAR score was like 4, ours was 5. And you just, all of a sudden you're feeling less than. It's just the nature of having children and having people with other children, in a community together. I'd like to see a little more of, let's not talk about, the ERB score or what they got or when they started, spelling their name or whatever. It's a thin line though, because there's such pride involved in talking about your kids and telling everybody like, look how great they are. They said a full word at 7 months, or whatever. I forget what the benchmarks were, but I think that it would be nice to see everybody just take the competition back a little bit. But by virtue of where you are and what you see every day, it's just a natural thing to compare yourselves to others.
What do you think, Jenna?
That makes sense to me. I was thinking about this while you were talking, Laurie, and it's such a great question, Zibby. I think there's something about dogs and about pets that's so uncomplicated that people don't compete. I mean, if you're in a dog park, you're not competing over whose dog is the fastest or whose dog is the whatever, because dogs are just goofy. I mean, if anything, you're standing around, forgive me, talking about poop, which I know you also might do in like, play groups, but it's just kind of like the dogs are just there to have a good time. And I think that in most of the communities in my life, I've been very lucky. They've been non-competitive communities, or I've sought them out that way. When I was in grad school, we had, of course, like incredibly cutthroat writing goals, and we all wanted to be, win the Pulitzer and be the next biggest bestseller and so on. But we still weren't competing against each other. And the writing community that I belong to in Boston and on the Blaze has been nothing but supportive. And I know, Zibby, you've had the same experience. So I tend to seek out the communities, I think, that are non-competitive, because that makes me feel good. And I like that. But I can totally understand how, by dint of the nature of the thing of parenthood, you want your kid to succeed in life, and you want your kid to succeed at the utmost. And so I can see how that might be a little bit more cutthroat.
Let me say this. I've been judged at the dog park. Don't give dog owners a pass. I've been judged for where my dog poops or how. Actually, it's more of a judgment of me rather than. But if like a dog is aggressive, all the other people go, "Oh, isn't that a horrible dog? What a horrible owner!" It works its way into everywhere. Maybe it's just the communities I join. I don't know. And maybe
I don't know, girl, come to my dog park. But I will say, I have a new puppy, Henry Higgins, who's now 20 months old, and when I took him to a dog park trying to get him to run his yayas out when he was a lot younger, before he had been neutered, before he had his snip, he was the dog who humped all the other dogs.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, who owns that dog? And I'm like, not me. Oh my God, whose dog is that? So yeah, there is that. I mean, anytime you put people together, there is that propensity to be judgmental. You're protecting your own. You want your own to do well. I do think that happens. But there was a sweetness to at least the community that I had with Woodrow. Maybe it was because he was an old dog and no threat to anybody, and just would lie there with his 4 teeth and his elegant cross paws saying, "Hello, ladies, come and pet me," So I think that there's something about a really old dog that unites people as opposed to the more competitive, younger communities.
So first, what you said about the writing community, which probably both of you would agree with, I have been so blown over by how nice and in it for everybody else, that's not even a sentence. I've been impressed by how supportive everybody is of everyone else's success. And it's not like a zero-sum game. I mean, there's so many books that come out. Anyway, I've been like over the moon delighted to be somehow, in this community now. So that's been really nice. If only it doesn't turn into, the Yoga Fan Nation. None of those antics presenting themselves. But let's talk more about your writing of these books and how you both conceptualized the books before you wrote them and what the process was like.
Do you want to take that, Laurie?
I can start. Sure. I mean, I was 50 years old when I started writing. I was a journalist before that. So I was really stupid new guy coming into it. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I'd just begin at the beginning and work my way to the end. And you can write that way, but you end up forgetting characters' names and what age you said they were and what color hair they had. And you have to constantly be going back. I have more of a streamlined process now where I write everything down so that I have a cheat sheet. So like, how old is China? And stuff like that. But I think that the only way to write a book is to sit down and write the stupid book. You have to sit your butt down and write. You can talk about it all you want. You can think about it. You can wait till the muse hits you, but you have to treat it like a job. You have to say every day between 11 and 3, I'm going to sit my butt down in front of the computer without my phone, without social media, and I'm going to write. And that's how a book gets done.
I'm going to put that on my wall now. Just sit down and write this stupid book. Like I love this. I would argue that if you're a journalist, you are a writer, no matter when you start writing fiction. And I actually envy the journalists who I work with now. I have a novel workshop still, and a lot of the novelists are former journalists, and journalists are very non-precious about their writing process. They do just what Laurie said. You sit your butt down in the chair. It is a job. Some days are great. Some days are a slog. Some days you hit it out of the park. But every day you sit down and you put your butt in the chair. And I do this when I'm working on a novel or when I was working on the memoir for Woodrow. But I have been writing since I was 4 and writing fiction before this memoir. I had 3 novels and a novella, so 3.5 novels before I wrote Woodrow on the Bench. And I wait to be seized by inspiration, and then I sit in a chair for 3 years and work on the book and don't really go out and socialize very much. Obviously, like, things shift around in life a little bit. And so for me, it's a little more daunting to think, oh, I have to write a novel. I'm going to just sit in a room for 3 years and do that. So I usually wait a long time between novels to get the right idea, because I don't want to spend 3 years in a room with an idea that I turn out to dislike. Writing Woodrow was so much easier for me in that sense. I didn't have to channel people and situations like a medium, which is what writing fiction feels like to me. This had already happened. So I could just write what had happened in 7 months of my dog's last chapter. And I then became non-precious about it. Like, I was running the Blaze then, so I would wake up an hour early every morning and I would write a scene that I had put on an outline on my wall and map to a calendar. Like, there was no magic about it. And I write fiction in the same way. I write an outline, a laundry list of scenes, map it to the calendar so I know what scene I'm writing on what day, and give myself a little padding. So if a scene goes dreadfully wrong, I have a couple more days to kind of tinker with it, and also do fun things like go to the dentist and walk the dog and sort of factor life in. But I'm taking a cue from you journalists about how to write. It's much more efficient. It's much better.
So in your iCal, let me get this totally straight. So you would have, like, today at 1:00, the actual, you would say, like, Woodrow goes to the beach, and that you would know weeks ahead of time that that's the day you'd write that scene.
Yes, absolutely. And again, with the memoir, it was much easier because I knew what I wanted to include in the memoir and I knew what scenes I was going to be writing when. But with fiction, a lot of those scenes are question marks on the iCal. So I'm like, chapter 4, Peter goes to the restaurant. Chapter 4.1, he meets his, wife, June, whatever. And then question mark, WTH, WTH, WTH. A lot of that stuff gets filled in as I go and gets filled in revision. Like, a lot of the time I'm throwing spaghetti at the wall and thinking, oh, maybe, I need some conflict in this chapter. Let's say Peter's mother-in-law comes to the restaurant. And then after I write that, I'm like, boy, that was so dumb, but let's leave it alone for now. And then in revision, we'll figure out what actually needs to go there. So that's how that works, or doesn't work.
I love it.
I will sometimes write the scenes I'm most excited to write. And then I have to go back and do, like, the fill-in stuff, which is never as fun. I mean, you get all the really great, the juicy stuff out, and you've got the skeleton of your story. But then there's the, you've got to get from A to B, and you've got to understand why she called this person instead of that person. And that's the minutia is what kills me when I'm writing. It's just, I get all excited about the big stuff, and then the little stuff is just, it's like dusting. You've got to dust everything. It's like the worst part of housecleaning.
And so when you're writing, do you draw inspiration from other books, or do you prefer to keep reading at a minimum and just delve into your own characters?
I personally can't read while I write. And it's only because I'm afraid I'm going to steal something from somebody subconsciously. So I don't do any reading while I'm writing, and I miss it so much. And I typed the end the other day on book 4. And the first thing I did was pick up Katie Couric's book and start reading it because I've been dying to. And I have a list like this long. I don't know about you, Jenna, but I just can't mix my brain that way.
Mm-hmm. I do read when I write. I read all the time because I read for A Mighty Blaze. We get a lot of galleys, and I do a lot of the interviews, and I need to read the books before I interview the authors. So there's that. But when I'm working on a project, I actually am reading everything in that project's lane. Although I'm not afraid of thievery. However, I am constantly terrified that somebody has written the book already that I'm about to write. And that is a little bit terrifying. But to me, keeping in the world of the book, whether it's the dog memoir or it's a World War II book or something else, because I write a lot of historical fiction, it helps me stay in the fictional bubble when I'm not actually writing. So I read a lot that's set during whatever era or during the subject that I'm writing about. And I watch movies and series and listen to music. Like, I have Spotify soundtracks that plug into the books that I'm working on. And that helps me maintain in the moments when I'm away from the book. And luckily, I haven't found a book yet that is exactly like the book I'm writing. So after like years, like 45 years, I'm letting go of that fear.
Tell everybody about your novels, Not Just Woodrow, which was amazing.
Oh, thank you, Zibby. And I saw Naya walking around behind you. We're both
yes, she's around here.
So great. I know she was like creeping around. I'm afraid to know where my dog is right now. I had to remove all his squeaky toys. So my novels, which are on the shelf, behind me on my giant ego wall. It's like a 14-foot ego wall, and I'm down with that. My first novel is called Those Who Save Us, which Marjorie mentioned. That was my 16-year-old book now. She sits on the shelf and gives me the side eye. And that is about a German woman who becomes a member of the resistance and then the mistress of an SS officer when she's discovered in the resistance to save herself and her little daughter. And then the daughter's quest to find out 50 years later what the mom did, because the mom will never, ever talk about that time in her life. And that book was miraculously and enormously successful, I think, partly because of the book clubs and partly because of the Jewish community, which embraced it so lovingly. And I was on tour with it for like 8 years, going to all the book clubs and going to Hadassah and going to temples and going on the Jewish Book Council circuit, which was so phenomenal. I'm super grateful. My second book is a contemporary novel called The Stormchasers, which is about mental instability and what to do if somebody you love is mentally unstable. And the third book, The Lost Family, which I was on tour on still when the pandemic shut us down, is about a Holocaust survivor named Peter Rashkin who tries to start a new life in New York, owning a restaurant, and what happens when his new family is haunted by the family he lost during the war. That was my elevator pitch for all three books at once. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Well, I wanted to make sure people heard, because this is a great audience for some of your past fiction in case they want to dip back in. Amazing. So what projects do you have next? What do you tell, Laurie, you have to tell us a little more about book 4. And then I want to know what Jenna's working on.
Yeah. I mean, what I want to say about Jen and my whole character, Jen is my character, in the book. And it started, oddly enough, she was 45 in the book, and she has gone through the aging process with me. So in the 4th book, she's 55, and she's, she's got all the concerns that the rest of us have. Her body isn't doing what she wants it to. She's got heartburn. She's got aches and pains and stuff like that. So it's not just about the classroom or, her being a mom. It's really about her being a woman and aging and all the BS that comes with that. 4th book is called Smells Like Tween Spirit. Jen is now no longer a class mom. Max is in 7th grade. And he has decided he wants to be a wrestler. He wants to be on the wrestling team. And so Jen reluctantly becomes a mat mom. So finally she's a sports mom where she never has been before. And the hilarity ensues. I mean, it was just really super fun to write. And then I'm also working on the pilot for Class Mom.
Ooh.
Yes, I can't really talk about that, except that writing a pilot is completely different than writing anything else I've ever done in my life. So it's very challenging right now. And what else? Oh, and I started another book. Look at me. It's a murder mystery. I'm trying something new. I just want to see how it goes.
Are you murdering any of the moms from the book or new characters?
No, those are just people I'd like to murder. This takes place in the 1970s.
Okay. Back in time. The list is endless. Sorry, Jenna, I think I cut you off.
No, I was just saying how amazing that is. It's like the Susan Isaacs novels, right, where she was writing things that were not murder mysteries and then started writing murder mysteries and thrillers, and they were so fantastic. And Laurie, when you write your murder mystery, I hope you will come on The Blaze. We have Hank Flippy Ryan interviewing people, and we would love.
I love her. We
all love her. We love you, Hank. She's so great. And this is the journalist ethic at work, right? Like you are writing and writing and writing. You just finished a book. You're starting another book, the murder mystery, the pilot. I'm like, well, I'm on Zoom tour, so I can't do anything right now because I'm on Zoom. But instead, what I'm doing is ideating the next book, and I'm looking at my January, February, March calendar and thinking, okay, it is time to start cooking a new project. And the way I will do that is by writing a short story first, which is always sort of my key in the ignition. And then I have 2 book ideas that I'm going to plug the short story into and see which one fits. So it will either be a romance novel that I might write under a pseudonym. If my agent is watching right now, she's like, oh God, you did not tell me about that. Or I'm going to write historical fiction because I've had an idea literally hanging on my wall for a while that I think the story might plug into. So I'm excited to start exploring those things.
Can you give a hint for the historical fiction? I don't want to jinx
it. I can't because I don't want to jinx it. Every time I tell people oh my gosh, how
all right. He's been loitering for like 40 minutes trying to get picked up. So
I'm so grateful you did that just at this very moment, so I don't have to talk about my next project. Good job. Who is that?
Sorry, this is Billy. He's a rescue. We got him about 9 months ago. Yeah, thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, I'm totally done with that. But I do have this feeling that whenever I tell an audience what I'm working on, everybody's like, ooh, and then I go home and I don't write that thing and I pivot to a different thing. So I hold that little candle close to my chest for the time being, but I'll try to get it out as soon as possible because I really love this part. Talking about the books is my favorite part.
And how does, just because we're here at Temple Emanu-El and everything, and the Streicker Center, how does Judaism play into your writing? And not just that, but life in general?
Do you want me to grab that?
I mean, Laurie, are you Jewish? I'm assuming you're Jewish.
I'm a converted. I converted 26 years ago to Judaism. I was one of the top 3 things I ever did in my life, besides having children and taking, believe it or not, the third one is taking a self-defense course, but it really changed my life in the way that I walk down the street and approach people and in my life in general. So yeah, but converting was, one of the most spectacular things I've ever done. It was such a journey and so rewarding. As far as, it doesn't really factor into my writing. Yeah, it might at some point, but I'm not really there with that.
I think I was raised as a sort of a religious mutt by a mom who described herself as a recovering Lutheran and a dad who described himself as a bagel Jew. Like he was one of these guys who walked around saying, I think religion is cause for all of the world's greatest conflagrations, blah, blah, blah. But he identified very strongly culturally as Jewish. And when I was a kid, I was always trying to get my parents to recognize that we had a religious duality so I could get extra presents. I was like, I would like to have Christmas presents. And also I would like to have Hanukkah presents. And Dad, we need to play with a dreidel. And my dad would say, that's great, Cookie. What's a dreidel? I mean, he didn't know from dreidel, right? So a lot of my exploration as an adult, especially with Those Who Save Us, was about re-entering the Jewish community that I didn't get given as a child. I interviewed, prior to writing that book, Holocaust survivors for the Steven Spielberg Foundation for 5 years. And I interviewed probably 60 survivors, so 6 survivors. And I would show up at their houses like looking like this. And they'd be like, are you sure your last name is Blum? And I'm like, I am sure my last name is Blum. Please teach me about my heritage. And so that was so heartwarming and so inspiring to me. I'm trying to find the right word. Instructive is the word that I'm looking for. And then being embraced by that same community when I was out on the road with Those Who Save Us and again with the Lost Family. I think that the way that this has really keyed into my writing for me is that I am obsessed with writing about World War II. I'm obsessed with that time period. I return to it over and over. My parents, for all of their agnosticism, were great readers, and my house was full of things like Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, because my dad was also a journalist. He worked for CBS and wrote for Walter Cronkite and all of those guys in the 70s. And my mom was a huge reader. And so I was steeped in the knowledge of this time period and inherited that DNA of survivordom, even though people in my family were not Holocaust survivors. So I keep going back to it over and over to try and understand, how did this happen? Why did this happen? What are the cause and effects? So that is a little bit of a wink, I guess, at what I would write next. It would be again set during that time period, during World War II time period.
Wow, so interesting. Well, there are a bunch of questions that have come in, so I don't want to monopolize the two of you lovely ladies. So I'm going to ask a few that came in from the chat. Okay. Susan says, Jenna, Those Who Save Us has always stayed with me. It's one of my favorites. Do you think it's more of a love story, a mother-daughter story, or a war story?
The short answer to that question would be yes, but you guys know I'm not capable of giving a short answer. So I think it is all of those things. It's a war and consequence story. So at its heart, I feel like Those Who Save Us is really about what happens to women during wartime, none of which is pretty. and then what the consequences are for those women, and then for their daughters and for the next generation. I explore that theme a lot in my work, second generation, third generation, repercussions of war. I do think it's a love story because of the mother's love for her daughter. The men in the book are none of them especially fetching or appealing. But I do think it's about love of family and love of eventually oneself and sort of learning how to save oneself. So it is all of those things. Thank you, Susan, for saying that, by the way. Thank you. I don't take that lightly.
I have a question. Someone said, speaking of dogs, Zibby, how did Naya acclimate to your home? Naya was my mother-in-law's dog before she passed away from COVID, and we adopted her a year ago in the summer. And she has acclimated great. She is great with kids. My kids are obsessed. I am obsessed. She follows me everywhere, and I love her. Anyway. Okay, question 3. Ricky asks Laurie, how do your daughters feel about your books?
Here's what they love. They love that after years they never knew me in my television broadcast years. They only knew me as mom because I stopped broadcasting when I had them. And my husband is well known. So I've sort of been the wind beneath his wings and the person in the shadow while he gets all the applause for many, many years. So when I stepped out with my first book and they saw how much attention I got from it and how much pride I got from writing it and finishing it and all that, and they were blown away. They were so proud, and they continue to be proud. And it's one of the greatest things when your daughter can say to you, Mom, I never knew you had this in you, and you do, and it's great, and you're the GOAT, whatever that means. But I know what it means, the greatest of all time, but to be called a GOAT at my age is just not nice on any level. But yeah, they love it, Ricky. Thank you for asking.
Lisa comments, yay, Laurie, sit your butt down in a chair. Just FYI. Okay. Tamar would like to know how Jenna became interested in Holocaust literature, which you kind of answered before, but based on your interviews.
Yes, thank you. So, the interviews were sort of an outgrowth of me being interested in Holocaust literature. I think it comes from having a dad who was Jewish and identified as culturally Jewish, and a mom who's part German and part Norwegian, and who was always asking the question, how could this country that had produced so many great composers and artists and writers and thinkers also have engineered history's worst mass genocide in this very calculated way? So she was always trying to answer that question for herself through literature. And then in 1993, when I had just graduated from college, she took me to Germany so we could try to figure this out for ourselves. And we drove around the country then. The Russians had just left East Germany, so it was more like going back to 1946 than being there in 1993. And we didn't speak German. We didn't have a plan. My mom was driving, so I always feared imminent death on the Autobahn. And we each had to drink little bottles of schnapps all the time to keep from our fear of death. And we just drove around trying to figure out what is it in the German personality or like the German psyche of the country and the German culture that had given rise to that most awful genocide. And I'm not sure that we ever found like a turnkey answer, but it was one of the things that gave rise to me writing Those Who Save Us. And we visited concentration camp Buchenwald at that point, where the book is set in Buchenwald nearby in Weimar. And I was always thinking, what if my mom had been alive during that era? Like, I'm a half Jewish girl. I would have been a Mischling and sent with my dad to the camps, but my mom would have been classified as an Aryan. And what would you do in that situation to save yourself and the people you love? So it was really that seminal trip to Germany that gave rise to that book. And if I never give up writing about this time period for the rest of my life, it will be too short, because there are so many Holocaust deniers now. And in the last few years, they have really come out of the closet. And I'm really dedicated to combating that ignorance and hatred.
Amazing. Jenna, you always speak in these like perfect paragraphs. I love listening to you. They like, right? They're like so perfect. Okay. Mindy comments, so many wonderful women writing books and talking about them. Thank you, Mindy. Carol says she is still waiting for Those Who Save Us to be adapted to a film. Has there been interest in your other books for film or TV?
Yes. And in fact, I just went for a walk with my film producer for Those Who Save Us last week, because she has a home in Boston. And so we managed to connect finally after like 3 years in person. So Those Who Save Us is still under option to become a feature film or now a series, which I think would be amazing. And if it does if she is pitching it as a series, then I'm going to be writing the treatment for the series, which I don't know about you, Laurie. It's like not a skill that I have, but I'm always grateful to learn new writing skills. So you
probably feel the same way. I just don't want anybody else to take this story from me. I'm the one that can tell it. And so I'm willing to try anything. I've been working on the pilot for the, first episode of Class Mom for over a year, and it's still not right. And, but I'll keep at it.
Same. And writing for series or writing for film is a collaborative effort. Also, when you're a novelist or a memoirist, you get to be an autocrat. But when you're writing anything that's for series or for film, other people are there to help you with it, which is good. And also a little weird because you're like, no, that's not the way that person actually talks. And that's not the way it's supposed to go. But I also find it very freeing. And when I was thinking about developing Those Who Save Us as a series, I was thinking about it a little bit like unorthodox and how you can use the modern day storyline to push the past storyline forward. And it's an interesting exercise I'm always grateful to delve into.
Love it. Another question for Zibby. Can you tell everyone about your upcoming book? I can. I just had Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids come out, shameless plug. And I have a children's book coming out in April called Princess Charming. And then on July 1st, I have a book called Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature. And I'm really excited about that. It's not even up for pre-sale yet, but we're working on the cover and I'm really excited. So anyway, more on that in the spring series of Women on the Move here at the Streicker Center. I'll be sure to plug that later, but thank you for asking. Gwen wants to know what you're enjoying reading.
I just finished Katie Couric's book and I loved it. I am launching into, what was the next one? I just downloaded it. I forget because I'm 57 and I forget things. It's like the windshield wiper of life. It happens and then the windshield wiper just takes it away. But I'm looking forward to reading a lot. I'm not so much of a murder mystery fan, so that's going to be really interesting when I try to write one. But I love good writing, just good writing, easy, that just rolls off your eyes and your tongue as you're reading it.
Mm-hmm. Same. And I'm reading right now. Usually I could write this on my hand and still not remember what I'm reading, but I just remembered what I'm reading because I looked over at my ottoman where my TBR stacks grow and grow and grow. So right now I'm reading 2 books that are coming up actually in 2022 that I would love for everybody to bookmark. One of them is Jennifer Hayes' Mercy Street. She wrote Baker Towers and 3 Mrs. Kimball's, and she's just phenomenal writer of literary fiction. She writes like a guy, actually. I feel like her books are very like no nonsense and like really good literary chops. And also Rachel Barenbaum's Atomic Anna, which is coming out. I keep forgetting. Rachel would kill me, but I think it's April. She works for me on A Mighty Blaze as our debut editor. And her book is about 3 women who are scientists, and there's also time travel involved, and that's super luscious and fun. And I'm simultaneously reading Ann Patchett's new essay collection. I love Ann Patchett's essays so much. In fact, at the risk of hearsay, I think I like them even better than her novels, except for Bel Canto. I think she just has such a great way of breaking down the world. So that's what I'm reading at the moment.
I just interviewed Ann Patchett for this series last week.
Oh, I was right so here. Jealous. Yes, I know. I need to watch that. Oh, and I also want to give a murder thriller plug for Hank's latest book, which is Her Perfect Life, which I read and loved, even though I usually don't read mysteries and thrillers because my brain doesn't keep all the details straight. So by like 3/4 of the way through, I'm like, well, if you say so, I guess that person is the murderer, but whatever. But with Hank, it's very clear and also very suspenseful, and I totally love it. And also Sarah Strohmeyer's Do I Know You? ? Which is another thriller which just got a shout out yesterday in the Times.
Amazing. Ruth asks, Laurie, which actress do you see as the star of Child Mom?
Class Mom, you mean?
What did I say? What did I say?
Child Mom.
You know what? There's a question underneath that says child, and I don't know. I cannot read, apparently. This is what I do for a living, and I can't even read one sentence today. So there you go.
Don't worry about it. It's funny. It has changed because when I first wrote Class Mom, it was 7 years ago. So I thought, I had Tina Fey in mind, and I hoped that, she would read it and option it and think it was perfect vehicle for her. But sadly, Tina has aged out of the 45-year-old sort of something person that I got. So I'm really open to suggestion. If anybody has any suggestions of who they think would be this. Remember, she's no beauty queen. She's a very average girl, with a weight problem and just, because some people say, oh, Reese Witherspoon. It's like, no, she's too beautiful.
That was my first thought.
Yeah. So it has to be, it's hard. I mean, some of the hardest things, and I want to ask you guys about this actually, the cover art for your book, for me, that's one of the hardest things to sign off on is what the cover of the book is going to look like, because it's never what you imagine. And you're wanting to convey so much on one sheet of paper.
It's such a good question. I don't know about you, Zibby, but the fiction is always kind of throwing darts at the wall for me. I do get writer first refusal on my covers, but I don't have final say on my covers. And I have been pretty lucky with most of my covers that they do come out looking something like I imagine. The Woodrow cover, though, I mean, there's so much that's easier about memoir, right? Because I was like, Obvi the dog has to be on the cover, please. And I sent HarperCollins a bunch of Woodrow photos, and they chose this one where he's actually looking at his vet. And the reason he looks so happy is that his vet is a lady. And the lady is holding a tongue depressor covered with easy cheese. But also just Woodrow loved going to the vet because there were so many ladies who's like, hi, ladies, Woodrow has arrived. And because the book is a little bit like Tuesdays with Maury, except with all the lessons coming from my elegant old black lab, I think that's why they chose this color scheme for the book, to signify that it was a memoir and it was a life lesson memoir. And so when I saw this cover, I literally cried and called my editor and said, this is so chef kiss. It's so perfect, like right out of the gate, no dickering. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will have all of your children if you ever want to have more children. So I got really lucky with this. But yeah, fiction is always a little bit trickier because you're trying to channel what the author thinks onto a book cover, and also hope that the audience loves it, because that's what the book cover is for. So yeah, it's more delicate, right? Zibby, what do you think about that?
I'm a little bit of a control freak, and I just literally did my own covers for my two anthologies. And I was like, here you go. Why don't you just take these? Yeah, I know. And then the Princess Charming cover was adorable. I had nothing to do with it, and it's great, but it's just the character on the cover. And Bookends, I saw the first round, but that actually made me change the title. It was called something else. So I was like, so now I'm waiting. But every day she's like, we should have your covers any day. I'm like, this is pathetic. This is the thing I keep checking my email for, but we'll see what happens.
I just feel like it's so final. Like when you sign off on it, like you're going to be looking at that cover for an awfully long time through the, promotion of the book, and then it's sitting on the shelves and people holding it up and reading it. And you just better hope you absolutely love it.
I know. I never want to see my first anthology cover again. I'm like, I can't. I just can't.
Dress.
Oh my God. I'm fine with the most recent one. The dress. I don't know. I'm just like, I can't. I like someone put it by accident, like in a magazine roundup about the new book with the old cover. And I was like, oh. Anyway, I don't know. It's like, a dress you've worn too many times or something.
I love the dress on that cover. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I love your first anthology. I love all the authors in it. They taught me so much about everything. It was like this great chocolate box of personalities and topics. But I was obsessed with the dress you were wearing on the cover. It was like Carrie's Oscar de la Renta dress in the Sex and the Cities, right? I was like, oh my God, it's so great. So I love that cover. But
thank you. No, I loved it too. I don't know. Was too immersed in it or something. Debbie is wondering what you two enjoy doing when you aren't writing.
Anything else? That question suggests that I enjoy writing, and I have to be honest. It is one of the most painful processes. It's lonely. You're so in your head. It's so. It's wonderful when it's flowing and you're getting it out. It's okay, but the everyday sit down and hope to God that something is going to come out of your brain and down your hands and onto the screen. I love to do anything, but I'll vacuum. I'll clean the dishwasher. I will do anything to not write. And that's why I have to make a special time for myself to write, because otherwise I would never do it. I just think about it or talk about it.
I love you, Laurie. I also love vacuuming. My house is very cleanly. Like I just find something so satisfying about it. And I think it's because it's what's called a containable task. Like when you're working on a book, it can take, months or years to know whether it turns out right. But when you're vacuuming, you did a good job. And for that reason, I also, when I'm not writing, I like to bake things. I like to bake bread, especially because within a few hours if the bread is going to be good or not good. But mostly what I like to do is physical stuff like that. I walk the dog a lot. I work out, I'm outside, but mostly I like to connect with people. And when I'm able to go out on tour, like this is my favorite thing to do in the whole world. I would run over somebody to get to a mic. Like my boyfriend is hot mic. Like I love a mic. And I also love connecting with people online, obviously. So when I'm not writing, I'm working on the Blaze and getting my people fix. And I'm so grateful for that. I love that. I write to connect with people. So the writing part, that's really tough. But the reward is that I get to talk to people about the book. And that is the best part.
I feel like when I'm reading and writing, those are the only times when I stop worrying about everything else. It's like meditation or something. I don't know. By the way, we've had some suggestions in the chat for casting, if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Melissa McCarthy, Aaliyah Shawkat from Arrested Development. I think she played Maybe. Although I thought she was pretty young, but maybe now she's grown up.
She did Brad Pitt. I think she's old enough now.
Oh, okay. Well, those are the two that have been recommended.
I like Melissa McCarthy. That's actually a great one.
All right.
I don't think she'll go back to TV though. Just saying.
Okay, and then I have one last one here, which is, did you know you would be a writer when you were a child?
I did, because my dad was a writer. As I mentioned, he wrote for CBS and NBC and ABC in the morning shows. And I grew up listening to his typewriter. And hopefully there are some people here who remember what a typewriter actually is. It's not just an app invented by Tom Hanks, although that is an awesome app. But all I wanted to do was grow up to be a writer like my dad. So I was writing my first stories when I was 4 about like mermaids and princesses and illustrating them. I went to a writing school for college. I went to Kenyon College. And I decided when I came out that the world owed me a living as a writer, only to find out that the world owed me a living in food service, because that's what you work in when you graduate with an English BA in 1992. So it took me a long time to get my first novel published. It wasn't until I was 29 that I found my wonderful agent and she sold that first book. But it has been the most rewarding career that I can think of, that I get to do what I fight with, and get annoyed by the whole writing thing, sitting in the chair. It's a hard thing for me, but to be able to make a living this way and to work in this community is something I'm literally on my knees grateful for every single day.
I knew I wanted to be a journalist. I knew very early because I used to hang a piece of newspaper on the fridge with magnets, and I would draw a map of Canada, where I'm from, and I would do the weather for my mother while she was making dinner. So that was the first thing. And then I remember starting a newspaper when I was in 3rd grade. But I did it in olden times. I pretended because I was very influenced by Anne of Green Gables and those, but the Lucy Maud books that I was reading. So I would pretend that we all lived in the olden times at Arch Street Public School. And I would, talk about the taffy pull that was coming up and the concert where we were all going to sing hymns. And it was, I knew at that point I wanted to do something, with writing for sure. And giving out information. The fiction part of me didn't come until much later.
Excellent. Well, I think that's it for the questions. Marjorie, I don't know if you want to hop back on. Thank you both for doing this today.
Oh, Zibby, thank you.
Could not be more my pleasure. I love this. Thank you so, so much.
I'd like to thank everybody. Laurie, fabulous. Jenna, fabulous. I really was looking forward to this, and it did not disappoint. It was wonderful to hear you both. And Zibby, I cannot thank you enough for all these wonderful, wonderful interviews. And everybody who's been watching, this is now the 11th. We've had 13 wonderful authors. And I think as a totality, it's just wonderful to hear fabulous women and hear their process and hear all about their wonderful books. And we're starting this series up again February 15th, and that will run for about 8 to 10 sessions. And we can't wait to see you all back. And Laurie, I know you're a New Yorker. I think you were with us for our Katie Couric event.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
I didn't get to meet you, but I did see your name on our list. But please join us anytime. And Jenna, when you're in New York, we'd love to have you with us.
Thank you. I would love to be there. And thank you to Temple Emanu-El and the Streicker series. Streicker Center is amazing. I will be there. I'm going to come down and crash your party.
We've got Zibby and I have just amazing events coming up in the spring, some really, really big things. So please watch our Streicker Center website. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Marjorie, for all of your tireless work, getting so many authors engaged and here and connecting authors and readers and all of the work that goes into this, which is a lot.
But it's wonderful work. It's fun. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you February. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Paul. Thank you.
Bye.